Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, why the biggest surprise of the offseason will be a great thing for the Red Raiders up front in 2024.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. And today, an exciting day for Locked On Texas Tech because we are talking big uglies. And some of them handsome guys, I'm sure their mamas would say. But we're talking trench work, particularly along the offensive line. We know that it is one of two units that makes the dream work, the other being their counterparts across the line of scrimmage. But it's also been a fairly interesting storyline, to say the least, really, this offseason for Texas Tech. And we're going to hear from new offensive line coach Clay McGuire coming up in just a moment. And one of those thoughts will have to do with arguably the best surprise of the offseason that happens to reside within this group as well. We'll get to all of that coming up, but curious to hear from you as well, just about the path that we have traveled since the bowl game. You had a coaching change that kind of came at an odd time. Don't know that last year, even with some of the disappointments you had with the offensive line, while you're still pairing that with a great year for a ball carrier in Taj Brooks, so they deserve credit there. I don't think it was what anybody wanted it to be, but I didn't hit the offseason thinking, hey, this place or this spot is ripe for a coaching change. But then we got one either way, and not just a change, but we see a familiar face back in the mix in Clay McGuire. So there was a whole lot to process, but I think most Tech fans, and certainly I include myself in this group, pretty pleased with what you landed with as far as Coach McGuire is concerned, and fairly optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and it's coaching changes happen often, whether it's position or coordinator or head coach. I mean, it's just kind of part of the business. That's why you're a bit of the exception that large in part you've gone back-to-back years with just one position coach change and everything else has stayed the same. I mean, it was Juice Johnson joining the staff last year. This year it's Clay McGuire. Those are the only changes, unless I'm forgetting something. And other than that, everything is you've kept your head coach and your coordinators and all the other positions together. And this one was as much about the fact that you were changing it, but the timing of the change. Odd timing or out of the norm timing as it relates to coaching cycles and hiring cycles. You were on the cusp of, spring football, and it just, So, but Clay's, what we have said about Clay all along, and I think what Joey likes, and I know what Zach likes and others, is that Clay's got a background that is not just this or this or this. It's like a combination of a variety of things. So not only did he play here, not only was he Mike's first recruit ever, or signee or whatever, commitment, whatever it was, but he played kind of that H-back, role, which was kind of that hybrid way back before you even used that word in football, maybe a fullback, a tight end, some different things. But then when he got into coaching, he's dabbled with tight ends and running backs and offensive line, obviously. And so when you put all that together, it gives you a really good perspective of not just offense, but really how the O-line is best served when I know what we're trying to get done from a running back and tight end and all these things, because it's all just, one dance. But I think that Clay has been a fresh voice, and I think that there's a few of these guys that have really responded to it. And you never know with coaching changes. There could be some guys that have gone the other way and we're thought to be in like the good graces. We're like, okay, I'm on the way up, and maybe that arrow's down now. But I mean, you've got some guys that are certainly have embraced Clay McGuire and Sheridan Wilson being the main one, obviously.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the coaching change. I should also add, for context, the other layers to this offensive line onion. A lot of personnel change as far as transfers that were brought in and expecting them to not just contribute, but contribute as starters. So a whole lot of moving parts this offseason for the offensive line. Coach McGuire did speak with the media this week, and part of what he talked about was what he's liked so far, particularly going back to last Saturday's scrimmage and some of what they continue to work on and make a priority as they move through fall camp.
At this point, when we didn't bust something, I thought it was our best pass protection as far as keeping pockets clean. I thought the D-line has done a really good job of collapsing on the quarterback and not letting him be comfortable in the pocket. Obviously, we had some mistakes out there that wasn't perfect, but when we did things right, I thought it looked how it was supposed to look, and the quarterbacks were able to step into the throws, and obviously when they're able to do that and can take those hitches up, they're a lot more accurate, and you see, we're able to do that for them. I'd like to see a stat, but I'd be willing to bet they're around 90% when they get a clean pocket to step up and throw, and so I thought that was the best thing we did last Saturday. I feel like, we're starting to hat things up in the run game. We're not finishing in the run game. So, we kind of get to our guys. I mean, there's a couple times yesterday in practice where we have, big explosive runs out there. If we can just finish one guy here, one guy there, if we can, put it all together and do a good job of getting to where we're going and finishing, I think we've got a chance to really do good in that aspect of our offense. And we're just not there yet, but obviously need to get there pretty quick.
Obviously carrying a lot of responsibility for any football team, but in a year where you feel like you've upgraded your pass catching talent the way that I think Texas Tech feels they have, and when you've got a Doak Walker contender in the backfield in Taj Brooks, man, you really want to be good up front so you can really set those guys loose and hopefully get them into the end zone.
Yeah, I'm sure that it does look great when you have a clean pocket, and that's the way it's supposed to work. And I mean, I'm want more of this. Little explosive runs, and then can't quite finish this or that. Does that concern you at all? That's like, this is where we're at. I mean, I don't know if I could pick one or the other. Would I rather have? I guess what you're hearing him talk about is we're a bit better with the pass pro right now than we are with the run blocking. I don't know which. If you could tilt it one way or the other, O lines are typically not equally great. They slant to one or the other. But I don't necessarily know if this is a bad thing. What I hear him saying, if you have explosive runs and we can't quite finish one guy here or there, that's the beauty of a Taj Brooks, because he can maybe finish off that last guy just by not coming down, right? But I love the clean pocket talk, especially when you're not really even certain what pieces you're going to utilize up front because of some injury and some minor tweaks and things like that. But I do like that, and 90% on clean pocket completion percentage, that dog will hunt, and it will bring you back plenty to snack on throughout the day if it continues to hunt at 90%. So anyway, I kind of like that.
Well, and I think if you look back to last year and try to kind of extrapolate into this upcoming season as to what you really wanted to see some improvement with, then you'd be talking about, obviously, pass protection. And comparing last year's offensive line to this year's offensive line is probably kind of an apples to lug nuts comparison, because the faces have changed. So we don't know what this group is going to be geared towards together, because we haven't seen them yet together. And I don't want to just I hate to just throw Taj Brooks to the wolves and be like, you don't need any blocking. You're the Brahma Bull of the 806. You can do it all yourself. But I think I might, if I could only choose one spot for them to excel within, I think it may be a little bit more kind of what you're pointing to there, that, man, we want a healthy quarterback. We want a quarterback to have some time to get the ball in the hands of those talented receivers, and we'll take what we can get from a ground game standpoint. But that may just be because as a Tech fan, I'm so starved for some better pass pro, I guess, and some better luck from a health standpoint for those quarterbacks. So I may be erring a little bit too far on that side, but let's just be good at all the above. How about we do that as we roll into 2024? As we roll into this season and we continue through fall camp, Chris, I want to get to one of the guys that I feel like maybe the best surprise of this offseason. And there may have been some internally who don't view it as big of a surprise, but I definitely think it is a big boost, surprise or not, for the Texas Tech offense, for the team, for the offensive line. And that is one Sheridan Wilson, and him basically taking command of the center position and not looking back since. And I already referenced the bowl game. You go back to that period of time when we really had a lot of conversation about Caleb Rogers moving to the interior and a lot of specific talk pointing to him as your center. So how do you feel like this situation has kind of come to be where all of a sudden it was Wilson, and it was Wilson almost alone as far as the guy that was taking those reins? And do you consider that to be, if not the, at least in the running for best surprise of the offseason for the team? First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. And of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. All of a sudden, it was Wilson, and it was Wilson almost alone as far as the guy that was taking those reins. And do you consider that to be, if not the, at least in the running for best surprise of the offseason for the team?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what would be second or third there. I think this is kind of far and away. Because, and the reason we say it, it's not, there's no participation trophy being handed out here or anything like that, but this is like somewhat unexpected. That's why we would be labeling this, because I think that, back in December, this was going to be Caleb Rogers, was it not? And then you're going to bring in all these, basically portal guys that are seniors, and it's like they're going to start all along the line. And Sheridan Wilson got a coaching change, and he's just done everything that anybody would have asked. I think, and to me, at this point, based on how close we are to the season, and then I know how much has gone on in the spring and up to this point, I don't know if he could do enough now to lose that spot at center, unless he got, knock on wood, unless he got dinged up or whatever. But I think this is what you're looking at. In that glorious handlebar mustache of his. I mean, I think he's going to be rocking it. And I can't say that there's any truth to this, but if you think about it, sometimes coaches aren't necessarily looking for reasons to play all the old guys. Sometimes they're actually looking for reasons to mix in a younger guy, because not that that's what happened here. I mean, I think he just probably played better, and he's been consistent and healthy and available, and he's 6'5" as opposed to 6 foot, and whatever. But he's got several years here to where, boy, you're going to feel really good about life if he works out for you. And this is a multi 2 or 3 or 4 year guy, whatever it is. That's what's a lot of fun. And maybe he's getting the benefit of the doubt because he's younger. I mean, if it's even, let's go with the younger guy, because we can pour into him. It'll get, you don't know. There's no way to know what Clay is looking at, or what, but that sometimes that is what happens. If there's a tie or it's close, But I don't know if that's what we're looking at here, because we've heard Sheridan's name really. I mean, help me out here, but it was like a week or so into spring practice, and you
From
and
the
I
get-go, it seems like.
And we did a show, and we're like, huh, okay. And it's never changed.
Because Joey used the word cemented for a couple of guys, and he was one of them so early on.
And I just don't think anything has changed. If anything, he's gotten better and all that. But I think it's clearly a pleasant surprise. And these are the good kind. This is what you want. You want more of these, of the younger group to kind of just push their way through and be like, man, I'm not asking nicely, but I'm taking an older guy's spot. Or somebody, if you had an idea of an older guy that was going to play here, I'm taking these reps, I'm taking this playing time, and that's kind of what's happened here.
Well, I mean, I think if Sheridan Wilson is not factoring in the way that he has, then obviously I presume Caleb Rogers would be in that spot, and then there's another spot you got to cover elsewhere. So it gave you some flexibility with where you would use Rogers. And I guess maybe they began spring camp or left last season, even bowl practice, whatever it might have been, with some of those thoughts like, hey, we're going to try him out here. And then all of a sudden it was just working well, I suppose. And they continued to move forward with that. But that's why it's not maybe just the biggest surprise, like, whoa, we didn't expect it, but it is the best surprise because of sort of the benefit that it gives you elsewhere along that offensive line as to how you can use Rogers or potentially use even some of those newcomer pieces like Scurry or Davion Carter if he's to factor in within the starting lineup. Let's take a listen again to Texas Tech offensive line coach Clay McGuire talking about what Wilson has been since Coach McGuire's arrival.
He's been an unbelievable kid since I've got here. You know, like I said, he's done everything right. He shows up. He loves Texas Tech. He works hard. Knock on wood, but he hasn't missed one rep of one practice since we've been here. And he's been in the building as much as he possibly can. I think he's really embraced his role. And he's just, it's one of those things. He's a sophomore. A lot of everybody, wants to recruit these kids and then go out there and think they should play as true freshmen. In that position, it's really hard. And so, most of the time, when you're getting guys that are able to develop a couple years and get their first opportunities when they're sophomore, it's usually the best way possible, And so I think it was just a timing thing for him as far as getting his opportunity at the time he's probably the most ready.
I thought that was a really interesting way to describe it. An opportunity knocks at the time that maybe you're the most ready to answer the door. And, hey, no wonder the guy has not relinquished what he earned in spring camp. Every rep of every practice you're getting, that'll stand out to a coach. That'll keep you in place, right? I mean, no little ding here or there, no tummy bug, whatever it may be to keep you out. That's probably one of the more effective ways to remain in the spot that you are.
I did love the way that Clay described, because this is like opportunity and it's kind of in his point in his development. It just kind of connects and it makes some sense. There's so many things in sports that happen where that doesn't connect and the timing is wrong or it's way too early, way too late. And then with the portal and transfers and all these things, people go try to find the right timing and then you just get kind of lost. It's not like an oven where you can just set the timer and then ding, okay, everything's ready. It's not how life works sometimes, but for whatever reason, this has kind of converged here to where this has made a lot of sense. But you could just tell, one, there's a lot that's on the center. That's just, it's like the safety and the quarterback to a certain extent, but the center's got a lot of, responsibility and there's some studying and there's some leadership and there's some, being able to verbally communicate and whatnot that comes with that position. And then sometimes if a team plays a 3-4, they'll line up the 350-pound kid right over your nose and just like, good luck trying to snap it because I'm about to run your behind over. So you deal with like the giant bull, depending on the scheme that there's just a lot on a center, but it is the most important on the offensive line in a lot of cases. Yes, we can get into left tackle and that's certainly important too. But I always look at center as one of the top 4 or 5 positions on a football team. And if you're good there, it usually like permeates out. if you're bad there, you're screwed. I don't care what else you have everywhere else. So, and Texas Tech's been fortunate enough to have, one of the best ones, Manny Ramirez, around here. Hamby was a great one as a player who was the previous offensive line coach. But those were when some of your best offensive line, you were just really good right up the middle.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder, if you can't be good in the middle of the O-line, can you be good on the O-line at all? Because, it's not like you have to have 5 all-conference offensive linemen to have an effective O-line. You can have a tackle that helps out a guard a little, or a guard that helps out a tackle a little, that improves this side or that side. But if there's not that center there in the middle to lend itself to whatever side and kind of picking up some of that slack and carrying the load, then I don't really know what you can establish. An all-conference left tackle is awesome, but if the other 4 guys are not doing their thing, then it's not going to be worth as much as it should be. So of vital importance, and I agree with you when you talk about maybe one of the 4 or 5 most important positions on the team, because I think a center can really set a tone for an offense, maybe a team at large, but particularly for the offense within the huddle, assuming anybody ever has the desire to huddle up anymore. But you know how those centers are. They can be a little quirky, be a little nasty, be a little eccentric, probably fairly intelligent as well, good communicator if they're going to be effective at their spot. But I think about some of the centers on high school teams I played on, some of my favorite guys, because sometimes they're not quite the wildest, but they can be the nastiest. And like you said, when you got a 300-pounder lining up over your forehead, you better have some nastiness to you. So hopefully Sheridan Wilson does. Let's take a listen to and a look at, if you're lucky enough to be watching on YouTube, a look at that sweet, sweet handlebar mustache. But otherwise, let's take a listen to Sheridan Wilson talking about what he has taken away from his time so far with Clay Maguire. Let's take a listen to Sheridan Wilson talking about what he has taken away from his time so far with Clay Maguire. You'll see Sheridan on the screen to the right. It's actually Ty Buchanan he'll be sitting with here in this clip. But let's take a listen to Sheridan Wilson talking about the impact of Clay Maguire.
I would definitely say Coach Clay Maguire has done a lot for me. Expanding my football IQ, and then bringing me confidence. And not only that, but I kind of realized that I need to get stronger and bigger. So during the offseason, I really spent a lot of time trying to gain weight and just get bigger in the weight room. Just being able to read the defenses and so as center, whenever you go out there, you command the O-line. And anytime they shift, linebackers walk up, safeties walk up, you got to be able to quickly identify it so we can put Taj Brooks in the end zone.
He's kind of alluding to what we're discussing, obviously, there being somewhat an orchestrator. For not just the offensive line, but the offense in general.
That mustache, man. Because this kid is pretty young still. Sheridan he's got a brother that plays at Oklahoma State. So football is in his family. And again, you weren't sure when. Was it going to be at center? Was it going to be maybe next year at a different position? You just weren't sure when all these things were going to happen, but seems to me pretty entrenched. But I think that the IQ aspect is massive, because you don't. We didn't talk about this earlier, but yeah, you're worried about the blitzes and what you're seeing as far as the front goes. You're worried about the play call and all this stuff, but you're also responsible for the tempo aspect too, because it all goes off of you. So if you get a 10-yard gain and we're in tempo, it's none of it goes unless you get your butt up there and get everybody set and get. So that's one more responsibility that this day and age that the center would have. I'm going to say I'm going to let you mention your candidate for the mustache comparison, but it was kind of like Hulk Hogan-esque, and to even go back further, superstar Billy Graham. Google it, people. Sheridan Wilson won't. He may know who Hulk Hogan is. He won't know who superstar Billy Graham is. And then you nailed it too, I thought, because you had the darker hair. My guys are blondish or bald, or in both cases. But your guy is very similar in comparison, because he's got the same hair color.
Yeah, I was thinking of Randall Tex Cobb, who was a boxer once upon a time, may have been a football player too, but then became just a consistent bad guy, rough guy, rowdy guy, biker kind of guy in movies throughout the 90s. Was a bad guy yelling at the dog to get away from the door in Ace Ventura. He was also a motorcycle rider with Chevy Chase and Fletch Lives, I believe. He rode along with Ed Harley heiress to the Harley fortune. I'll have to throw in a picture here if folks are not jogging the memory on who that might be. But either way, he looks as a center should and sounds as a center should. Sounds like he's a good communicator.
He rocks it like a boss, man. It looks good. Like it's very natural. It doesn't seem forced. It gives him a little swag because I don't think he's normally some outspoken, boisterous, loud kind of guy. He's very respectful and trying to learn, and his coach really, really likes him, and he's taken coaching. I've tried to get bigger. I've tried to learn and everything, but the handlebar, man, that hey, chef kisses there for Sheridan Wilson's facial or rocking handlebar mustache there.
Well, and I've heard some. I think you may have even used it at one point in time on this show, but I've heard some refer to him by a nickname of Sherry. Still does not look like a guy I want to call Sherry. So I may still abstain from that. But I'm curious, Chris, before we wrap up our conversation, elsewhere along the offensive line, we had a conversation a couple of days ago about what's playing out at the left tackle spot between Sterling Porsche and Dalton Merriman. Porsche, a newcomer. You got another newcomer out there who's a little bit further away, I think, from making an impact in Mo Rodriguez. But I'm thinking about Davion Carter, Vinny Scurry on the inside. Scurry's already gotten a lot of attention. He seems certainly entrenched there at one of the guard spots. But I'm wondering about Carter and whether or not it is a disappointment if you have a newcomer that doesn't wind up as a starter, because I think whenever maybe he's arriving or that he's going to come to Texas Tech, I don't know if we're thinking about Wilson as the center. Maybe still thinking about Rogers, and that means, okay, is it Carter that's the center? But I don't obviously a piece like that is going to be good for the offensive line room in general. But how do you see this playing out for Davion Carter? Do you think there's still an opportunity for him to work his way into a starting lineup? Do you think that it's sort of been written now that maybe he is going to be a depth piece, or what do you make of that?
Yeah, I could see we could argue this one of two ways, and I'll probably lean toward one of these ways as opposed to the other. But I could see where some would go, man, did you recruit the right guy here if he didn't come in here and end up starting for you? Did you land on the right target? All of those things. And I think that's a fair question to ask aloud. But isn't it, look at it this way. Isn't it a positive that one of your own and your incumbents took him as a threat? And we've got some different positions and things like that. But if we're just talking centers or guards or whatever,
yeah.
And one of your returners basically was like, man, I'm ready now. I mean, my time is now, and I don't care who you brought in here. I mean, that to me, that's a positive too. And then I'll say this: if and I think that's in all caps. If Davion Carter's mindset is right, and he embraces this, which is tricky because I'm sure he didn't come here thinking, I'm just going to be a depth piece or a backup possibly. But if that's the way this turns out, he is one of the best insurance policies on your entire team. I mean, wouldn't you have loved to have had the equivalent of that last year? The answer is yes. So I think that people just don't realize how long these seasons are. And I mean, I've seen some criticism with Kansas and Arizona talking about some of the more potentially overrated teams and people questioning if they're deep enough, if they have enough players to get through the season to play at a high level. I think this is a prime example of Texas Tech saying in this aspect, we've got some depth here that's very quality and it's experienced and all those things. So these are long seasons, folks. And when somebody's out a month or 6 weeks, that's an eternity when it comes to a football season. That's a third or a half of it. And you need people to step up. So the O-line or whatever doesn't just dip. So, and maybe I'm being Pollyanna-ish and thinking that he'll embrace something like that if he doesn't end up a starter, but it certainly appears that's the way this is trending. I just don't see Sheridan Wilson being knocked out of center at this late date, or Vinny Scurry at left guard, or Caleb Rogers at right guard.
Yeah.
Now, if you say, you know what, we tried this whole thing this offseason, and we're going to move Caleb Rogers to one of the tackles.
Right.
That's where it fits best. Then I think Davion Carter's got his hand up going, all right, folks, I'm good to go. And you insert him at one of the guard. But that's really the only way I see him being a starter. So, but either way, it's about finding your best 5, and then you're identifying the top 8, and then away we go.
And shout out to any members of the Carter family that are in the audience. Had a YouTube comment not too long ago after I referenced Carter as a depth piece that somewhat incredulously stated, this man says a top 5 interior offensive line transfer is a depth piece in the comment section. And I asked if they were kin. Somehow the comment got deleted, so I don't know where they went. But yeah, we're a little surprised by it as well. So one of the more interesting things to keep an eye on as you go through fall camp, and I think you're exactly right, if you don't wind up happy with the way the offseason has progressed at either one of the tackle spots, then all of a sudden it's back to talking Caleb Rogers, and then I think it is very quickly talking Davion Carter slipping in, I guess, to a right guard spot.
This is a kid that when he got here, I don't know if there's anybody that's more of a student or wants to perfect his craft from a – because I think I told you this. When he got here, it's like, hey, man, give me every game and every practice you can give me. I want to watch, and I'm trying to learn this offense, and I'm trying to learn. This is prior to spring and all these things. And I think that, one, you earn a lot of street cred and respect with that. But keep in mind, too, say something were to happen. There's a variety of different ways where Davion could be inserted here. If you see a situation to where, you know, Sheridan gets dinged up, maybe that's a natural. But if you lose one of your tackles, that maybe moves Caleb outside and then Davion in. And, just because you would see a depth chart and certain names listed, that's not the same thing as we're in a game, put your 5 best out there. Well, this is what it would look like. And it doesn't necessarily look that way on paper when you see it listed out. But no, he's just his measurables are not what some others are. Everybody knew that when you got him. That's not a knock. That's just the reality. But as far as his want to and it didn't help that he's been slightly dinged up a little bit here lately. I think that, in a boot, missing a few practices doesn't help somebody like that that's trying to push their way through. Yeah. But as far as want to and headiness and all the things and like experience, he's got all of that. And I think that he's well liked, and because his care factor is very high.
Man, just before we get out of here, another shout out to 3 Yards in a Cloud of Dust High School, my 150-pound center whose head was so big he could never get the face mask down to the chin. He was rocking it like a cocked up ball cap all the time, and you never seen a man clean up a pile and a goober standing around that pile like the center that I knew once upon a time. So shout out to all the centers in all of our lives throughout all of our football years. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoy the conversation. We'll be back on the other side to wrap up the week.
Guns up, people. We will talk to you mañana. Looking forward to it.
Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And by the way, thank you so much to all of those subscribers. We said a few weeks ago we wanted to be to 5,000 before kickoff on August 31st, and we beat the pace. Got there midweek with still a few weeks to spare. So thanks to those saddling up and ready to ride on YouTube with Locked On Texas Tech. Appreciate you being out there. Tell a friend, tell a foe, tell anyone you know that they got to get subscribed there or anywhere you get podcasts. And of course, another great way to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. So thanks to those who are mixing it up in the comments section on the reg. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.